Well, it is that time. It is that time. The wild card round of the playoffs is over. So as a result, we know a few more draft positions that are officially locked in, specifically picks 19 through 24. And as a result, that leads us to here and now, where I'm going to provide you with my updated 2021 NFL mock draft version 5.0, I believe this is. Yeah! And I took to Twitter, and you guys should follow me on Twitter for all my draft takes and NFL takes in the months to come. I asked you guys to sit there and give me the names of some teams that you specifically wanted me to talk about today, because I didn't want to just sit there and do what I always seem to talk about the top, talk about some of the quarterbacks, and if I happen to remember anything else, I'll talk about them, and you guys did that. Also, make sure that you guys smash that subscribe button if it's your first time checking out my mock draft, because I'll be doing more mock drafts and a lot more NFL draft videos in the months to come. So, again, back to the Twitter piece. I asked you guys to tell me some of the teams you wanted me to talk about, and I've got a few here that I'm going to talk through, so it's a little different than talking about the top. You can look at all 32 of my picks for this one round mock in the description box below. We're going to start off with the Miami Dolphins, an interesting place to start. One of those weird kind of full circle types of things. You're starting to hear some rumors, and they're rumors at that, about when you look at draft capital available, and you look at fits and opportunities for both teams. Like, does it make sense for the Houston Texans to trade Deshaun Watson to Miami and get back Tua and that number 3 overall pick and maybe the first round pick next year? And here's what I have to say about that. If I'm the Houston Texans, that deal is dumb on a variety of different levels. You could spend your entire franchise history, which up until 2017, the Texans had done, trying to find that true franchise guy. You had Matt Schaub for a few years, who was an above-average starter, but he was only above average. He wasn't really that dude. You finally got that dude, and now 4 seasons after getting that dude, you're potentially looking at trying to send him out the door. Like, that is monumental stupidity of the highest order. It absolutely is. And it is one of those decisions that, if you're not careful, will not only damage a franchise for 1 year, or 3 years, or 5, but potentially a generation or two. So, seller beware on that one. As far as the Miami Dolphins, personally, is it worth giving up that much for a Deshaun Watson? Maybe. Because if Brian Flores is not going to be sold on Tua Tagovailoa, then you need to send Tua somewhere else. Because clearly he wasn't completely sold on him, which, if you're going to hedge your bets and go back and forth on the guy once you go to him, but you don't really go to him, like, that's not how you treat a young quarterback. That's a recipe for disaster. So, there certainly are going to be teams that are in the marketplace. The Dolphins are one of those teams that can provide the most in terms of draft pick capital, and then, some type of young quarterback that could potentially be worthy. But I think you have enough, if you're Houston, you have enough questions about Tua, whether or not he can actually become the guy. Like, is that really smart to make that deal? I don't think it is for either team, frankly. But it's probably smarter for the Dolphins, because if you can get Deshaun, it might get you out of the potential of Tua being a bust. And that might be worth an extra first-round pick or two to get the guy in Miami. But assuming Miami doesn't make that deal, then you got to look at building around Tua. And it's got to be some type of offensive player, whether that's offensive lineman or whether that's wide receiver. And we'll see with Devonta Smith's size, if that's going to come into play or factor or consideration when it comes to his draft slot. But in terms of his performance and just the projectable skills themselves, you're certainly looking at a top 5 talent at this point. So him going number 3 here, like, reunite him with his old college quarterback, put him in a system and a chance where he could be a real difference maker. He could be that game breaker, that home run threat, that true number 1 option. Miami desperately, badly needs skill talent around Tua. Like, that's a bad thing. Like, are you ready to fully make a judgment on Tua after one season that wasn't great when the skill talent around him was not great? So personally, I would say Miami should keep that 3rd pick unless they get a team that is really desperate to deal up to get the 3rd quarterback, let's say. Or if the Jets do something stupid and don't take a quarterback, then potentially the 2nd quarterback. Like, if you're the Dolphins and for some reason the Jets decide they're going to stay with Sam Darnold and they take, like, Sewell or they take Devonta Smith number 2, all of a sudden you're sitting there with that 3rd pick if you're Miami and you're saying, okay, we could get a lot for this pick for somebody else to come up and get a quarterback. Like, Miami's in a real position of power here, and it is best for them to maximize it as much as possibly can. Got a couple of mentions here for the San Francisco 49ers, and let me be perfectly clear. Yes, the San Francisco 49ers made a Super Bowl with Jimmy G. But the Bears once made a Super Bowl with Rex Grossman, so what the hell does that even mean? Now, certainly Jimmy G is a better quarterback than Rex Grossman was. That is true. But when you look at the 49ers, the biggest problem with Jimmy G, outside of just talent and what he can do versus what he can't do, the biggest single problem is just his goddamn durability, his ability of availability. Like, you can't continue to invest huge money into a quarterback position for a guy to play 6 games one year, 3 games another year. Like, you just can't have that. You need a guy that's going to be able to be depended upon to be available on a consistent basis. And they don't have that with Jimmy G. And as far as I'm concerned, if the 49ers are in a position where they can take one of these young quarterbacks and be patient with them and build around him, then that's what they need to do. The Jimmy G experience must end. Let him go back to New England or somewhere else. But he's not that dude. He's never going to be that dude. And if you continue to have him there in San Francisco just more and more, you're going to be calling him Jimmy Garbage Pail. Because that's what it is. You have a quarterback you're paying big money to make 3 starts. That's garbage pail type of stuff. 6 starts. That's garbage pail type of stuff. So if you got a guy there like Trey Lance on the board, yes, there's a lot of risk there, but there's a significant amount of upside. It would be absolutely foolish of the 49ers with this 12th pick to not go quarterback, or potentially even thinking about trading up to get that guy. Because if you feel confident in Kyle Shanahan long-term as your head coach and as your play caller, like, you need to give him something to work with. You need to give him something that, you know, can really cement his place there with that organization for years to come, especially since you're looking at the defensive side of the ball. You have to assume there's going to be some type of defensive downturn because Robert Saleh is most likely going to get a head coaching job somewhere, whether that's in Detroit or in New York with the Jets. It's going to happen somewhere. So what do? You probably want to be a little less dependent on your defense. You want to be a little more dependent upon your offense. So they got to take a quarterback here. And Trey Lance has an intriguing amount of upside. You know, certainly, like I said, there is risk there. But you can say there's risk with all those guys. But some of the tools that he has, like, the tools matter. The old school mentality or thought process of, you know, it has to be about accuracy and like, those things are important. But damn it, the tools matter. Mahomes, Josh Allen, they show you the tools matter. If you could move, you could sit there and improvise, and you could sit there and make those difficult throws because you could throw everything on a rope. Like, those tools matter. Justin Herbert, same type of deal. Like, it's not the traditional drop back and read through all the progressions and hit the guy in stride. Like, that's nice, and you want the guy to have that skill, but that's not the only thing that makes a successful NFL starting quarterback now. So a guy like Trey Lance has that intriguing upside. They'd be stupid again not to go after him. I got quite a few mentions about the Washington football team. To me, I look at the Washington football team, and you're going to say, where they're picking at 19. If there was a team that was lower that was going to go really aggressive to try and get a quarterback, it has to be Washington. Even more so than Chicago, I think. Because they're just coming off of the Dwayne Haskins disaster. Are you going to roll with a combination of Alex Smith and Taylor Heineke next year and feel really good about that? Maybe they will. If there's a quarterback that drops there to 19 that they really like, then they absolutely have to pull the trigger. Because they have nothing there for the long term that they can really count on. But assuming for the moment that they don't, and you're looking at this 19th pick, you know, Kadarius Toney from Florida, one of these wide receivers certainly makes sense, somebody to pair opposite Terry McLaurin. Their offensive line played really, really well this past season for the most part, so I don't know how much you want to think about investing a first-round pick there, but maybe you feel better about left tackle long-term if you invest a spot here. So you could be looking left tackle, wide receiver, maybe tight end, maybe running back. You know, any number of those positions work, quarterback certainly. But for the Washington football team, to me, if they don't trade up big to go get a quarterback, it's stay at 19, take best available offensive player. And let me emphasize again, best available offensive player. Because you're not going to go any further than you already have if you don't improve that offense, period. Which brings me to Chicago, obviously, being a Bears guy, being a Bears fan, and having a good portion of my following being Bears fans. You knew this was going to come up. For the Bears at pick 20, I don't know what to make out of this organization. Here's what I can say. If you're at pick 20 now, you're picking between whatever quarterback leftovers are there and whether or not you feel like one of them is really worth tying your future of your franchise to, like a Mac Jones or a Kyle Trask or what have you. Or you're looking at building up somewhere else on the offense, whether that's wide receiver because, you know, Anthony Miller's probably gone. Allen Robinson might be tagged but then gone. So you need help at wide receiver. You got to have something other than Darnell Mooney going forward. And then you look at the offensive line, specifically at tackle. Both of their tackles stink, and both of them need to be upgraded. Here, I've given them Darrisaw, the offensive tackle from Virginia Tech. And I would expect the Bears in this draft to invest multiple times in that offensive tackle position because they need to. They have to solidify that for the long term. But quarterback certainly an option. Do I have a ton of interest right now in them trading up significantly to go get a quarterback? No, and I'll tell you why. Because if Ryan Pace is still calling the shots, or somebody hired by Ryan Pace because the McCaskey's reward is mediocrity on the field by promoting him to team president, do I have faith in that leadership to trade up again to get the right quarterback? No. Why would I? We've done that song and dance. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the results to be any different. Why in the frick would I expect these results to be any different? I have no interest in that whatsoever. Frankly, with this Bears team, of course, again, because they're picking at 20, how appealing is that to anybody else? But I'd have more interest in them peeling back at this point and getting additional picks. Because where the Bears' needs are, especially on the offensive side, offensive tackle, wide receivers, is a deeper class. Now, knowing if Ryan Pace is still the general manager, he's a fucking idiot, so he'd be more likely to trade up 2 spots because he panicked because he's just got to get his guy and then more likely to not swing and miss on him. But the Bears either need to stay put if current leadership remains and take best available offensive player, or ideally trade back. As they need this draft pick capital that they do not have because, again, Ryan Pace is a moron. Got a few questions about Pittsburgh. Now, obviously, team need number one is if there's a quarterback like a Mac Jones or somebody there at 24 that falls to them, that has to be the guy. Big Ben's done. And even if he comes back next year, Big Ben's done. If you're the Steelers, you have to get that right. Like, you want to continue being relevant and continue potentially being in a contending position for years, then you have to go get the quarterback. Now, the Steelers sitting there at 24, man, it's going to require a big move and require a lot. But if there was a team that was maybe trying to trade up to get that third or fourth quarterback in this draft, that would be a team that I'll have my eyes on, expecting them to potentially be aggressive because, you know, they're smart enough to know the truth, that if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a chance in this league on a consistent basis. And they know the era of Big Ben is over. Even if he continues to play, they know it's over. So you've got to upgrade that position. And as far as the Browns, that was the other team I got a few mentions of. I think for the Browns, like, I've seen quite a few people talking about linebacker, you know, and that could be somebody like the Browning kid from Ohio State, who I do happen to have go a little earlier here. I got him go to the Raiders at 17. You got the kid from Notre Dame as well. You know, could be an option. I look at it for the Browns. They're in a spot, I think, for the most part, where, you know, it's best player available on defense, but it might just be best player available, period. Now, maybe you're saying, I'm not drafting a quarterback there. Fair enough. I'm not drafting a running back there. Fair enough. You know, but wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, it's not illegal to draft those positions even if you feel good about them because you're trying to play the long-term game. You're trying to play kind of the infinite game. You're not just drafting for the here and the now. You're trying to get those players that can be stars in the future, regardless of the position. Ideally for the Browns, it would be an opportunity of need and value lining up, and it's somebody on the defensive side of the ball. And that ultimately would be where I would expect their focus to be. I know I've got them taking the corner horn from South Carolina. You know, but linebacker could certainly be in play. Defensive lineman could certainly be in play. I think for the Browns, it's weird talking about them now, but they're in a position where it's less about need, and this is going to be a big adjustment for Browns fans, but it's more about, like, letting the value play out and come to you, and it's best player available, or potentially even trading out of this pick entirely, getting out of round 1 and getting some additional day 2 and day 3 picks. It's a weird spot for you to be in, Browns fans, I know. Take a little adjusting, but you should enjoy it. But that's my mock draft. You guys can certainly review all 32 picks again in the description box, and let me know what you think. Again, smash that subscribe button. Follow me on Twitter because I'll have a lot more draft takes in the months to come. All right, I'll see you later.